All right, why don't we get started? Good morning and welcome to Job Hunting in a Pandemic, a survival guide to rejoining the workforce. We're delighted to have everybody join us today. I'm Lyle Hanna. I'm the head of the Hanna Resource Group, and we run HR for a whole bunch of companies. Most of them are in Central Kentucky, but some of them are scattered around the United States, and we do HR work every day. We're out there recruiting every day. We're dealing with this crazy pandemic and so many things, and we just thought we might have some insight that would help people that are trying to rejoin the workforce. We had the mayor on a call the other day, and she said 25% of the workforce in Central Kentucky is unemployed right now. We thought, wow, we should try to lend a hand. So we're glad that you've joined us. We're going to have a great couple of sessions. Look at this. We've got a slide up here I hope you all can see. Today is the kickoff, but we're also going to do a second one on the 15th. It's going to be talking about how you get your resume up to date and in the changing world. On the 22nd, another Wednesday, we're going to do overcoming the digital challenges and how you do everything digitally, your communication and your handshake, everything that you have to do to help find a job. And then on the 29th, we're going to have another session on the new normal, determining how you handle an interview. How do you do that in a virtual basis? And how do you come out of that really looking great? And then we're going to do a wrap up in August 5th on that final decision. How do you decide if this job's right for me? And how do I negotiate to get the best deal so that I can be successful and the company I had to go work for is successful? So I think we got some great things down the road, and we look forward to having you join us. We've got a super talented group today. Ray Davis is with us. Ray Davis has been a career coach for many years, and he actually was my coach over 15 years ago and taught me into starting this business. And he and I have been working together all these years since then, and he helps people in their transitions. He was the head of Right Management, the largest outplacement company in the world, and he was the head of their Lexington office for many years, and just a super guy. I'm glad you're on here, Ray.
Thanks,
and John Coffey is on here too. And John has been working for Hanna Research Group for quite a while. He has 15 years in talent acquisition, 11 of those on a national and global basis, right out of our community here. But he's just a super recruiter, and he came up with this idea and thought we ought to go, share some information with people. And the last person to introduce today is Andrea Tyra, and she's an HR coordinator with the Hanna Research Group. She got her undergraduate degree in business from Eastern Kentucky University a little while ago, and she's working on her MBA right now. So she helps us deliver a lot of services to HR folks across the Bluegrass and around the United States. You know what, just a little preview of what's coming up next, because the next 4 weeks we're going to have special guests with us. And so the next week we're going to have Christy Jackson. She's a talent acquisition consultant for HRG, that's Hanna Research Group, but she also is a full-time recruiter for Sazerac. And she is recruiting people every day. So the good news is there are people out here that are hiring people, and we're going to introduce you to some of them. On the 22nd, super talented Beth Davison is going to be with us. She's the executive director of the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce Workforce Center. She's been the head of Louisville SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management. I think she's been the head of Kentucky SHRM. She really knows the job market, and she's going to share some insights with us about how you go find these jobs right now. And then the next session, we're going to have Perry Scholes, and many of you may know him. He was the Chief Human Resource Officer for Thomas & King right here in Lexington. He is now in New Orleans. He kind of has kept two residents for quite a long time. We do quite a bit of work with him, but he's the head of SHRM in New Orleans. Super guy, hand on the market. He's going to be with us. And then on our wrap-up session, many of you may know Dave Baumgartner. If you don't, this will be a great chance to get to know him. All his career in HR, a senior position with Signature Health, and now he's operating as an executive coach. He's going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to have quite a few good sessions, and if you miss any of them, don't worry about it. They're on our website, and you can go back and catch up. So if somebody that isn't here with us today, but you talk to them and you think they ought to join them, join us. Tell them to go watch this week's. It'll be on the website, easy to watch, and then they can catch up and pick up right where we are next week. Today's session, unemployment self-checklist. Okay, what does that mean? Like, who am I and what is the best job for me? And don't just go after any job, begin with the end in mind. You've heard that. How do you think now about where you want to be in the future? And I know jobs are probably pretty scarce right now in a lot of ways, but going after one that'll make a difference for you, that will, you'll be able to do much better at it if you do the planning ahead. Your time will be well spent. You'll find a better job faster, and it'll be a job that you can be successful with. That's what we're talking about today. I'm going to cover a variety of topics, and starting from ground zero. How do we get this thing going? And then the importance of self-evaluation. Who am I and what I need to go do? Charting your career path. So what might it look like? Think to the future and how you might be successful in over time. And then creating a measured plan of action. We're going to be talking about all those things. And we're going to kick off by going to John. Oh, but there's one other thing I want to say. Look at the bottom of your screen. Move your cursor down to the bottom of your screen, and you'll see something that says chat. If you click on chat, it won't mess up the screen. It'll give you a chance to write us a message. And you can send us notes, and Andrea is going to be cataloging those questions. If you've got things like, I didn't understand this, what does that mean? Anything you want to know, right, Andrea? We may pick it up and take it while we're talking, but for sure, we'll try to pick up all those questions at the end of the session. So we're looking forward to this. Let's go make it happen. John, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Lyle. Wow, what an introduction. So thanks, everyone, for joining us. And as Lyle has mentioned, this series really is meant to be informative, but we also want it to be interactive. So to keep us on pace with the content, just a couple of house things. We're going to mute everybody, but we do encourage you to ask questions in the chat. We'll try to address some things as we go along, and then also at the end, we're gonna carve some specific time for questions. So keep those things rolling in as they come up, guys. We want to make sure that we're here for you for that. Also, as a reminder, again, we will be recording these sessions, so you may be able to refer back to them. We want to make sure that you can do that. And then we do encourage you guys, you may know some other people that could benefit from this, so they can step in at any time, catch up, because we are recording these, and we encourage that as well. So really, we wanted to kick things off with a bit of interactive aspect as we kind of look at this ground zero. Where is everybody at today? So Andrea, do you want to kind of put a poll out there for everyone? And we'll just give you a few moments to go ahead and click on that. And then Andrea, if whenever you feel like you've got a good amount of responses, if you want to give us an update on what that looks like.
All right, I'll wait a few more seconds. Looks like there's still people that haven't responded. Okay.
What do we have? Ha-ha.
Oh, okay. Well, we got a good mix here. Well, that's great. So really, the focus of this is truly coming from the lens of, if you end up unemployed, what do you do? Where do you go? But this is going to be very applicable to anybody that's in the, sort of curious job-seeking mode. And of course, any employers that may be in and listening, we are all for kind of staying in touch with you guys, especially because we're going to have a lot of job seekers on here. So that said, we want to go ahead and get started and dive right in. So I think the idea around this is really the start of the journey, right? We're all starting from ground zero. You're unemployed. Now what? So when things like this happen, you tend to feel like you're an island by yourself. And there's a lot of emotional, psychological impact that goes into this. But, it starts with really just taking a deep breath, right? We want you to remember that you're not alone. In fact, there are many others right now with the pandemic and the state of the world. A lot of folks are going through this at the same time you are. So just wanting to share some facts to add some value to that. As of July 2nd, the Department of Labor released their Bureau of Labor statistics around unemployment. Those figures are pretty interesting. So 19.2 million people were listed on the unemployment list currently, and that actually doesn't even count the uninsured, which would make it much higher. So, so that's nationally, and then if you boil that down to percentages, nationally we're kind of ranking around 11.3% unemployment. Lexington, we're kind of closer to the 20+% range, so much higher. But the one little piece of light in there I do want to share is that from March nationally, we were at 14.8%. And so over March, April, May, and now June, we've seen sort of a slow trickle down. So that's a really good sign for a little bit of a bounce back from the economy. But, you know, just knowing these numbers, regardless, I mean, they're sobering to say the least, right? So this is going to mean that competition is going to be fiercer than ever. So you're wondering, you know, where do I go from here? And it's going to start really by taking some action. And truthfully, you need to hear this, guys. It's about picking yourself up, dusting yourself off, and finding your confidence again. So we're here to help you with that process. The mission that we've got over holding these sessions is really to help you hone the tools, techniques that you're going to need to leverage in order to get back to the workforce. But it's all really going to start with taking an introspective look first. So how does that look? Well, we're going to talk about self-evaluation. One of the things that Ray and I both see a lot in the journey of the job seeker is really just the rush to apply without really having a game plan to start with. So that is like one of the most critical things that we can really you know, harp on, guys, is that we know time is of the essence, that you've got to do what you got to do, but don't mistake time used as time wasted, especially when it's purposeful time. So before you start your journey of applying, you really need to do a bit of soul seeking first. And I think this is just a good self-check. We're not talking about a spiritual mecca, but hey, if that helps you, certainly, you know, do that too. But we're talking about understanding the life and work path that you've carved up to this point. So stopping and talking and taking the time to really self-evaluate and reflect on the critical things that you need to think about in your job search is really going to just help you create a better blueprint to follow on this voyage that you're going to take. So how do we do that? Well, I think if you think about your resume, right, and the landscape of things that you would end up writing down and listing, you're going to look at things like experience, skills, your personal brand, life goals, career stage. These things are really kind of the guide points to your compass. So you want to start by writing them down. Start thinking about them. Start writing them down now, guys. Chart a true understanding of what you've achieved, what you would like to achieve, and what your personal brand means to you. We're going to mention personal brand several times throughout this session today. And, you know, for me, I've got a story about personal brand that hopefully will help. Early in my career, I was very successful, and I had a vice president come to me, and we were at an after-hours networking event, and he said, John, you know, I think you're doing a great job, but one of the things that you really need to think about is not just how you clock out at the end of the day and hang up your hat, but how you also carry your brand forward. And I'm like, well, what does that mean, Tom? And he said, well, it's not just about what you do at your job every day. It's your personal brand as a job that you're going to never clock out of, and you're going to carry that with you your whole career. So it's about getting those tools and understanding. But I don't want you to take my word for it. Michael Finland, the Chief People Officer with PricewaterhouseCoopers, used to be the global and U.S. talent acquisition leader. And so just a little bit about PricewaterhouseCoopers, if you guys don't know, it's one of the most well-known accounting firms in the United States. They were on Fortune's list of the 100 best companies to work for 14 years in a row. And Michael is quoted as saying that you need to go into an interview with extreme clarity on who you are, what you're passionate about, and what you want to be known for. You also need to be able to articulate, exude authenticity, both with your words and your demeanor, have stories that demonstrate what makes you exceptional. Those stories should also show the true you in a memorable and authentic way. So if you ask what personal brand is, I couldn't have said it better. It's about who you are, knowing your story, and really kind of understanding with confidence where you want to go. So, so we really want to take a look at things like what stage you're going to see yourself in your career. And if you remember in your college and school days, truthfully, the practice was always known as brainstorming, but this is the time to start writing this stuff down and really critically thinking about it. We just need to write it down and start drawing points on the map for where you want to go. Keep this list handy as we go through this series, guys. It's going to be really important. So as far as the next step, Ray's actually got a pretty good tool that he's going to bring you into, and he's going to talk a little bit about your personal SWOT analysis. Ray?
John, the next step is really important. Most of the people listening probably have done this kind of SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat analysis. It's often done in a business context as you're beginning to do a strategic plan. But I want you to think about doing this for yourself. And starting with the strengths, your strengths, what are the things that you're particularly good at doing? And just make a nice list of it, keep it handy, add to it as the days go on. Do the same thing for weaknesses, and don't be afraid to put down what are authentically your weaknesses. We all have them. We're not perfect. And it's really important to know what your weaknesses are. So that as you're going through your career, you're working to improve them. And you don't walk into a job where one of your weaknesses is one of the strengths needed to succeed there. So this strengths weaknesses list that you're putting together can be very helpful, not only as you prepare to interview, but also as you assess a job offer. The third quadrant is opportunities. And sometimes people get a little confused on what that means, but the word is external and uncontrollable opportunities. There are things outside yourself. You don't control them. And they are, they're there. And you have no control whatsoever over them. So they have nothing to do with you. And the same goes for threats. They are the external uncontrollable threats. Obviously, number one today is COVID. The way in which we've been hit by this shutdown and what it has done to companies. Many are out of business and many people are out of work. So that is obviously a threat that is going to, that you have no control over, but you have to recognize. So you start to make the list under each of these four categories. You know, start your list, look at it the next day, and just keep adding to your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats until you have a really good picture of your own situation. Now, here are some realities. Because of the COVID situation, your competition will be stiff. Job search is hard. I don't care when you do it, but it's particularly hard in this situation. So the more you prepare, the smarter you work, the faster you'll find an opportunity. But your search may be a marathon. And I can't tell you how many people I've coached over the years who say to me in our first meeting or so, wow, I've got to get a job within the next month. That's unrealistic. And so I have to bring them back to reality. You may need to get a job in the next month. That doesn't mean you're going to, because the process of finding a job, first of all, just preparing to go into the job market yourself takes time. But then once you are out there with your resume, there's a whole process being gone through by companies, and they go through much slower than you would like, I can assure you, as you're sitting there waiting for them to make decisions after you've interviewed. But even getting into the interview situation takes time. So buckle down and button up all your finances, because you may be on a marathon. Don't buy anything that you don't have to have. Find ways to conserve. Then you need to prepare yourself and your family to know that there will be lots of ups and downs in this. It is an emotional journey, and it's like a roller coaster. You get a job offer and you're higher than a kite, and then you don't get the job, and then you have sunk to the depths. And there are things you can do to keep yourself on an even keel. And those are kinds of things that I talk to people about, because this is a very real situation. The other thing is preparing your family, and particularly your spouse. Spouses can either help or they can harm a job search. And so often when I coach people, I encourage them to have a meeting where they bring their spouse, because when the spouse knows what a job search is all about, they are much better to support you. When it's an unknown, when it's a scary, dark place, they cannot provide the kind of support you need, and you need support during this time. And finally, it's a full-time job. It is, I recommend to everybody I coach, at least 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, work on a job search and put it in just like it is your job. Then I want you to take 2 days off. I want you to get away from it, because it will be a lengthy process and it can really drag you down.
Absolutely. Well, so, you know, in that lens of just that reality check, you know, part of what we need to talk about today that's really important is just how to chart your career path. So, you know who you are, you start this process of self-evaluation, and it's really kind of time to decide what path do you want to commit to. And you know, one of the things that I think a lot of folks get hung up on is, well, I've only done this, this is what I'm good at. But I think what you don't hear often from the hiring manager or the recruiter point of view is that it's not just about what you've done or what work that you've actually done. It's can you do the work today? You know, if you were to apply to a job today, can you do the work? It doesn't matter if you've done it before. Can you do it now? And so that's kind of profound to really think about. And you really got to think about how do you make an impact right now? But before you do that, you've got to really think about what you need in your life. So critically think about, what do I need out of my next job? You know, is it the work-life balance? Is it better pay? Is it upward mobility? Do I want to grow in my career? Do I need less stress out of my next role? I worked 80 hours a week and I'm ready to step back and work 40 hours a week. I traveled 80% of the time. I want to be with my family now. You really got to think through these things, because when you get to the stage of talking to somebody else on the other side of the desk, you need to present yourself confidently that you know what you want and what you're looking for. And this is the place to do it, is right now, to get it figured out, to get it sorted. And you may just be looking for something different. You know, I get a lot of folks even later in their career that say, John, you know, I want to go a different direction, and that's okay. And Ray talks a lot with his folks about career transition. And, you know, it's never too late to do that. And so certainly he'll talk more about that as we go, but something to think about, guys. So how do you weigh out this stuff in a way that it makes sense, right? You have jobs that are out there. We know that you don't have the perfect crystal ball for every single job. So what's the rubric? How do you measure what's a better opportunity versus another? Well, Ray's going to talk a little bit about that with the tool.
John, the Excel spreadsheet you see here, it looks very complicated, but I want to walk people through it, because this is a great tool when you're involved in a job search. First of all, one of the things you need to do early in the job search, before you ever get to the point where you've got a resume, is to put down the criteria that you want to use to judge that next opportunity. And I've got an example here. This person says they want a comparable salary, they want to stay in their current home, they want to stay in Kentucky, and so on. So make that list of criteria. And then secondly, I want you to put an importance weight on each of them. How important is the salary? How important is it staying in the current home? All those adding to 100. Now, at that point, once you've done that, if you're married, or if you have a really good friend who knows you well, sit down with them sometime and walk through those two things and say to them, well, you know me pretty well. Does that make sense to you? Does that weight make sense to you? Because you would be surprised how many times a spouse or a good friend can ask a question or say something that says, you're right about that. I think I will change that, and I'll add that criteria, or I will change that weight. So it's important to kind of talk about this with somebody else. Then when you get an opportunity, rate that opportunity. 1 being poor, 3 being it's okay, and 5 being it's excellent on the basis of those criteria. You can see as this example, opportunity A, this person said that comparable salary they rate is really 5, excellent. And then they go down and with 3s and 1s at the different ones. And then the spreadsheet multiplies at 50% times a 5 and gets a 2.5 weighted total. And then those weighted totals are total, and at the bottom you see a 4. And a lot of times, and I shouldn't say a lot of times, but sometimes people actually have 2 or 3 opportunities that they have 3 offers or 2 offers, and they need to make a choice among those offers. And this tool gives you a really good insight into that. And in this example, there were 2 opportunities, opportunity B and A. And you'll notice at the bottom of opportunity B, the total is only 2. And so you would say, well, using this tool, this model we have here, this person should take opportunity A. I want you to read the bottom of this slide. When you look at the totals at the bottom, you may choose to go with the one that has a lower total, because this is a tool, it's a model. And if you've been keeping up with current events and seen how wrong models can be about COVID, how many deaths were originally forecast in the United States and around the world, and what is actually happening, you begin to realize that every model is just that. It's a tool. But if you, after you look at your model and you see a 4 and a 2 and you say, you know what, my gut tells me I should take opportunity B, I say take opportunity B, because your brain operates on a much broader scale than any model can ever duplicate. So this is a really, really good thing to do early in your process. Put down what you're looking for, what's your next job, the kinds of things you're looking for in it.
And I think that's such a great point, and I just want to add in for a little bit of color. You know, if you notice some of these items on the list that Ray has here, guys, you know, they may be mutually exclusive or they may have a direct correlation. For example, the number one thing that, you know, is always on everyone's mind is salary. But, you know, to take a comparable salary, does that mean that then you have to leave the state of Kentucky? You know, and so those are big decisions. And I think speaking to salary too, you know, that's always, everybody thinks, well, hey, you know, that's the big thing that has to be on the mind. Well, I can tell you that when a hiring manager or recruiter speaks to you, of course, they want to figure out what your salary range is. They want to make sure that you have a means to live. but I think what they're really always looking for is your interest in the opportunity in general. So if you're dialing in on the right opportunity to begin with, the salary will come. And I want to just make that clear, because a lot of employers don't just say, well, hey, this person's affordable, let's hire them, because if they say that, then their HR and their recruitment team is going to say, then you're evaluating the wrong things, right? So it's more about what you're looking for and making sure that this tool works for you. So thanks, Ray. And then you actually have a little bit about creating a measured plan of action and how to define a job objective.
Yes. Sometimes, well, first of all, having a clear objective in anything is important. If you're traveling, if you say you want to go west, that's rather vague. But if you say you want to go to Phoenix, that's more detailed and it's more specific. And seeking a job is the same way. It's often hard to be specific when you're trying to decide what the next job in your life will be. But I recommend you work hard at that process. And I've got on the left side of the screen a really specific and clear objective. My objective is to find a job at a senior level cost accountant. I want to use my strong analytic and people skills, my CPA, and 7 years of cost experience to find ways to help my next employer to improve its bottom line, and to progress ultimately to VP of Finance and Accounting. That's really specific. If you can do that, when you have a specific objective like this, you will get there faster. If you have a very loose, vague objective in a job search, your job search will likely be much longer. So I want you to think about that. And if you cannot do a job objective at this point, don't stop thinking about it, because the longer you're in your job search, hopefully the more clarity will come. And sometimes you may want to broaden your objective, and that's fine. In other words, today I'm a cost accountant, tomorrow I want to be in charge of all accounting. If you've got the credentials to do it, that's fine. Just make sure you have the credentials to support it.
It's a great point. So, what we're trying to do is to get you guys a real good framework to start thinking about these ideas and then preparing for your resume. That's what our whole next session is going to be about. But to get there, you've got to really have these guide points, these internal, introspective things figured out, so you know who you are, where you want to go, and what you want to do ultimately, and what you're willing to do. So setting comfortable parameters around what type of work that you're going to be willing to take on, what type of environment fits your life. I know everybody's like, when they get into a place of desperation, they're like, well, I'll take anything. Well, that's not true. And I don't think you should. And so that would not be my advice. I think you've got to figure out, though, realistically, where you're going to be flexible, right? So I am willing to, so I'm a cost accountant now, I'm willing to take a lateral or a lateral shift to a different role that's similar in a parallel environment, but I don't want to be a payroll specialist, right? So that's the difference between flexibility and inflexibility. Think about that on the front end, because that's going to start kind of help you rein in what your job search is going to look like to begin with. And it's going to get you to a place where you really kind of know where your points of resistance are, right? No, I don't want to do that. Yes, I do want to do this. Also, begin to think about that personal mission statement. You heard me say it before. Again, that is your job that follows you your whole career, regardless of what you're actually doing. That is you. That is what you want to do. That is who you want to be, and that is where ultimately you're going to want to go. So it's important to really think about that, because if you have a strong understanding of what your personal brand is when you walk into an interview, you are going to have a next level step above a lot of candidates out there that are still trying to figure things out. So it's very important to think about that. And you got to think about what also you want to share with the world. So what your story is. You know, I get often questions from candidates that say, you know, look, I had a bad experience with an employer. It was a toxic environment. How do I, you know, curate that story where it makes sense? And the thing is, you want to speak to your abilities. You don't want to speak to a toxic story, right? So it's just a matter of, you know, hey, things didn't work out. I took what I could. It was a great position when I was there, and I've now moved on, and I'm ready to take the bull by the horns and take it to the next step. So it's kind of shifting and pivoting and navigating how you narrate your story is going to be very important. Don't focus on the negative, right? You have so many good things in what you've done, what your background is, and that's what employers get excited about. They want to hear the positive. They want to hear why you're passionate about it. If you walk into an interview and you're fiery and you're passionate and say, hey, it didn't work out, look, you're human. And I think any employer is going to understand that, but you don't want to draw all that attention to that. The story that you want to share is that positive story. And again, I want to just reiterate, you got to stop thinking about what you have done and start thinking about what you can do. If you take away anything from this today, guys, it's you've done a lot, you've got some skills, and you've put in some hard work. And look, from there's a lot more road to go. There's a lot more things that you can do. And that's where you want to start to shift your energy. So Ray's going to talk to you a little bit about how to translate some of the stuff that you're thinking about into action and writing your accomplishments down for that resume prep. Ray?
John, it's interesting, as we've talked about this, most people, when they start a job search, the very first thing they do is write their resume. And we haven't even started talking about writing a resume, have we? And that's because this preparation work is really, really important. It's important in developing the information that does go into the resume. And it's really important as you're developing and reminding yourself of those good things you can do when you get into an interview situation. So writing your accomplishments, this is really, accomplishments are the key to a successful resume. If you had two resumes of two people who have done the identically same jobs over their careers, and one has impressive accomplishments beneath each of those jobs, and the other just simply writes down the responsibilities and duties they've had, which one is more impressive? It's the accomplishments. It's the things that we do that makes us different. And so let's talk about how to write a really good accomplishment. You begin with an action verb. Increased, began, initiated, led, achieved. Okay, now you've got to start. What did you do? What was the result of what you did? So you increased volume by 5.1%. So the second part of the accomplishment is the result. And then the third part is simply explaining how you did what you did, how you achieved that result. And the thing I want to point out about accomplishments is this. Sometimes people have a hard time when I ask them to do this because they've never really thought about what they've done, what they've accomplished. But if you look at the ones on the screen, on the left, you see the numbers, the percentages that pop out there. If you can put a number, a metric on your accomplishment, it is going to be far stronger than if you don't. But if you look over on the right side under Explain Briefly, there's an accomplishment there that has no metrics in it. But it's a good accomplishment. And so go ahead and write your accomplishments. If you can estimate the results, if you can estimate that whatever you did that saved $10,000 a year by reducing the number of hours in doing a certain project, fine. Your estimate is all you need. No one is going to audit it. And so you can talk about it, you can explain it, and when you get into an interview, these are the kinds of things you want to be talking about.
Ray, we had a question come in.
Yes.
It says, do you have any advice for folks that hate talking about themselves, as far as like stepping outside of yourself and seeing assets and accomplishments that they can bring to the table?
Well, you are going to have to talk about yourself. So get used to it and practice it. Practice is really part of being effective in an interview. Many of us feel the same way you do, that you know, you don't want to blow your horn too much. Well, this is a time when you need to blow your horn and talk to people about what you have accomplished. So it starts with having accomplishments and then talking about them, and get someone to role play with you and allow you to do that. I think that will get you over the hump, and it'll really result in a much better interview process for you.
And just to add to that, you know, one of the things that I really like to tell folks is that, to Ray's point, you are your own CEO. And by CEO, I mean you are your own chief encouragement officer of your personal brand, right? So when you step in to talk to folks, I want you to be proud of the things that you've done. Be proud of your accomplishments. The practice is going to help. Work with your significant other, your spouse, a friend that's willing to lend an ear, and just get used to it, because you've got a lot of great things to talk about, and you've got to really kind of have that self-motivation behind you, because that positivity, again, is going to exude well in the interview. And you've got to prepare, because part of this stuff that you're writing down in your accomplishments, you're kind of getting ready for that interview process, right? And so in that interview process and readiness, start thinking about some of the questions you're going to be asked. Tell me about a time that you were able to successfully navigate a challenge. How did that work out for you? What is the thing that you're most proud of in your career? Why? You know, give me an example of a time that you were able to successfully multitask and come out on the other end okay and still hit all the deadlines. So regardless of what your specific job field is, these questions are going to form and manifest in the interview process throughout. So kind of thinking about that ahead of time, getting prepared for that, that's the best piece of advice that I give to candidates. Is just not just the research of the company and the role, but it's also having some of those tools in your toolbox to be able to pull out and speak to those stories. And this is where it's going to really start. That's a great question. Do we have any others, Andrea, or are we good to move on?
We don't have any others right now. We're good to move on.
Okay, great. So we've talked about a lot of stuff, guys, and I know it's a lot of theory, but this is good theory. We want you to get to a place where you feel comfortable self-evaluating, using these tools to leverage and start to craft the blueprint for what your resume is going to look like, what your job search is going to look like. So, you know, hey, this is an interactive session. We're hopeful that you guys can ride along to all of these. So we're going to give you some homework. We want you to go through these exercises that we've laid out today. Again, these will be available and recorded, so you can always refer back as you kind of look at these tools so you have them. But, you know, self-evaluation is going to be the first part. So that's the component that we want you to start with. And then from there, we would like you guys to do your personal SWOT analysis, really take a good look at that, write that out, do the practice, and then create that blueprint. So even if you don't have the jobs to weigh out that weighted job criteria, I think start thinking about what's most important to you. Is it staying in Lexington? Is it being able to be close to home and not traveling much? Is it salary? Is it being in a specific job title, or is it just being kind of adjacent to the field? Really think through those things. and then create that personal brand or personal mission statement. Who are you? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And just that confidence in knowing what your next step should be. And it doesn't matter what job you take, that's going to carry with you forever. So think about that now, put it on a Post-it note, put it on your wall, look at it every single day, and just know that's the goal, right? That's where you want to be. And from there, we've given you some tips, kind of the writing your accomplishments for preparing for the resume. So start doing that work now, because when we get into the next session, we're going to hit you with a lot of resume theory, a lot of do's and don'ts, and it's going to just be good to already have some of this stuff fleshed out ahead of time, because then you'll be able to tailor it as you go. So we're excited for that. And then, Lyle, I know you're going to kick off some Q&A for us. So we've reserved some time here. So I'll give it to you, sir.
Thanks, John. You know, since we have so many people that are on here just to check this out, I'm going to throw out an idea. What if this COVID thing has caused us to reflect on our jobs, like working from home, and you know, a lot of things have changed. What if I am sick of my current job? Now, none of my employees can listen to this question, okay? But anybody else is fine. I'm sick of my current job. Should I quit, or should I keep my job and work part-time, or should I quit and go full-time looking for a job?
Let me take a swing at that.
Okay.
Lyle, don't quit your job.
Thank you, Ray.
During this time especially, and it's everything's different. Every person is different when I'm coaching people, and so I can't make a blanket statement, but for the most part, I think leaving your job, if you have a job that that you can tolerate, it's bringing in money, I would recommend you try to part-time look for a job and keep your job. You may run into situations where it's just intolerable for whatever reason. And if that's the case, then you may want to seek a job search coach, because it helps a lot to have somebody who really knows all the ropes and can keep you on the path to finding the next job in the most effective and the fastest way. But you know, it's really risky, and particularly nowadays, to quit your job and expect you're going to find a job in a reasonable period of time. We're just in uncharted waters right now. John, you have a comment on it?
I do, and I think I've gotten this question a couple of times, and I talk to candidates all the time about it. And really, you know, every recruiter and every hiring manager is going to say, well, what made you leave that opportunity, right? But at the end of the day, you got to do what's right for you too. And I've got a couple exceptions to that I think make sense. One is if it's a very toxic environment and you've done everything you can do, but you need to get out of there, then you just got to start to think about, can you afford it? You know, if you're following Dave Ramsey's plan and you've got 6 months saved up and you can breathe and reset and do it, then okay, you've made the choice. But that should be a worst case scenario for sure. And then I had a candidate that I literally just talked to yesterday, and she was at the pinnacle of her career, but she was traveling 90% of the time. She was working 80 hours a week, and she just wanted to be closer to home, be with her family. The job morphed into this whole beast of a thing where she was only supposed to be traveling 10% of the time. They said the first year it'll be okay. The second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, it never changed. And so for her to get out, reset, take a breath, she had to step away. So the circumstances are, there's not a one answer fits all for it, but you know, to Ray's point, I think if you could hang in there and you could do it on the side, great. But there may be a couple instances where you have to make a decision, and just make sure that you can afford to make that decision.
Okay, so I'm going to hang on to my job now. Should I tell my boss I'm looking for something?
That's a good question. You know, and it's a really important question. This really depends on the amount of trust and integrity you see in your boss. And because I've had bosses that I would not have told if I were looking for a job, because I had heard that others did and lost their jobs immediately. And so those kinds of things happen. If I had a job, or excuse me, a boss that I trusted, and I would have to trust them implicitly, I would recommend telling them. But that's it's an individual question, and you have to assess the risk involved. And there are companies and some bosses that say, "Oh, so you're interested in looking around? I'll give you full-time opportunity at doing that." And that's not a good place to be.
Okay. I hope everybody has noticed the chat box down below at the bottom of the screen, because I've sent quite a few of you some comments during this thing, and I haven't heard back from, I've only heard back from one, so you may have a personal message down there from me you want to check. All right, any other questions just from the group? Anything else coming in? Okay, one other thing here is that, if you don't have a job right now and you're having a really hard time finding something, does it make sense to go back to school to get a degree or to get an additional degree like an MBA or something like that?
Yeah, I get that quite
Ray,
often.
I'll let you tackle that one first, and I'll piggyback.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get that quite often, and as I ask questions to the person who starts to think that way, I often find that what they're really doing is avoiding the tough job of finding a job, and they're going back to something that they find comfortable, which is going to school. So I really question that when people want to go back for an MBA or for whatever degree they're seeking, and make certain that there's a reason, a real good reason why they're doing that, because it's a lot of money and it does take you out of the job market for whatever period of time. And unless it's leading somewhere that that will bring fruition and get you where you want to go, I don't recommend it very often. John?
Yeah, and I have a counter to that. I think, again, it's going to depend on your field, how well that translates. Is that something that most employers are going to ask you for? And I've got a personal story that kind of led me to go get it. I was riding high on a really strong role with a very large automotive manufacturer locally, if you guys can guess who that is. And we were doing a lot of great work, but the Great Recession hit. It impacted a lot of us, and I ended up laid off. And so I actually had a partner of this manufacturer reach out to me, roll out the red carpet, fly me up to Philadelphia, and meet at their headquarters. And I got through the interview process, and it went really, really well. But I was sitting across the table from a senior vice president that said, "John, I would hire you today. I just wish you had an MBA." And I said, "Well, I have a bachelor's degree." And he was like, "Well, I just think an MBA would lead better to the future of what we're looking for." And so for me, I always kept that in the back of my head. Now, I didn't go get my MBA right away. I did find another job. But my next employer, you better believe, the first thing that I did was find a way to get an MBA while I was working, so I would never have that be a hurdle again. And so that was my personal commitment, my mission. I didn't want to ever have a block in that. Thank God I did it. It's helped a lot along the way, and I learned a lot. But I did it the right way, and I think I did it by working at the same time. And maybe you can't afford to do that always, but that's my story.
We've had a couple more questions come through the chat. The first one is, I find a lot of people get complacent. What would you say to that? The idea of switching jobs during such an uncertain time. Can you speak to that as well?
Can you, I'm not certain, Lisa, exactly what they're asking.
Say that again.
Can you
Or
can you repeat the question, Andrea?
I'm sorry, Andrea.
Yes. I guess she means like complacent in their job search, or just the position that they're in currently in general. And then as a follow-up to that, she said the idea of switching jobs during such an uncertain time. Can you speak to that?
I'm happy to start that one, Ray. I think first off, you know, when you're in a career nowadays, never be complacent. The age-old philosophy of I'm gonna start working here and I'm gonna end working here, that's gone. You know, it makes sense to constantly reinterpret and recalibrate your own skill set to, at any given time, have to leave and go to another employer. It's scary, I know, to think about, but you've got to really be realistic now. Even employers, they don't expect you to stay there for 20 years anymore. To be truthful, when you talk about talent management and talent planning within an organization, I mean, heck, if they can get, for entry-level roles, if they can get a couple of years out of you, they feel like they've got a good ROI. And for more senior roles, if they can get 5 years out of you, they feel like they've done a great job. So, this thought process of staying in a role for a long time and not doing anything to dust off your resume or to even interview, you know, one of the best pieces of advice that I give people is it's okay to interview. It's not a loyalty thing. It's not even a fact that you want another job. It's just the practice is good. Networking is good. Don't close yourself off to the world and say, well, I'm just being loyal because of my employer, because I think that's the wrong thing to do. And certainly in this environment, speaking to COVID in the scenario, I think, yeah, absolutely. It's harder to find things, but it's still okay to network, and it's still okay to think about your career path, because we will get through this, right? Andy tells us every day, we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it together. And I think that's true. So you got to think about the future for sure. Ray, do you have anything to add?
Not really. You've covered it. Go ahead.
Okay, the next question is just general. Are you seeing any positive signs in the economy locally? It feels like there are more positions being posted, etc.
I can just briefly speak to one thing. One of the people I've been coaching for the past year found a job, started Tuesday. So things are happening, but to talk in generalities about job opportunities are useless, honestly. Only thing that matters is your profession, your opportunities, and the only thing, the advice I give everybody is work like the devil to find a job, and don't give up. You just have to keep working at it. And today is harder than normal, and it's always hard to find a job.
And contextually, I don't know about just all local, but we do work with a lot of employers. I would say that some of them are on hiring freeze and others are, it's not like COVID ever happened. So it really does depend industry by industry. Ronstadt released a really neat report. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and they spoke to automotive manufacturing has slowed down a little bit, right? And I think we've all probably seen that. Hospitality locally has been just really devastated. But there are other areas, healthcare, engineering, IT, not really super affected or impacted depending on where you sit in those organizations. So really it's just down to the industry. One other thing that was interesting was retail got hit quite a bit during COVID, but there was like a 50% uptick in looking for retail management because they thought as they thin staff that they needed to actually hire more managers in that environment, which was interesting. So,
any other questions, Andrea?
That's all the questions that were in the chat.
All right. Hey, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Ray and John, Andrea, thank you for your efforts in pulling all this together. Somebody asked if they could have the slides afterwards, and I think we're delighted to send those. If you want to send us your email address, we can certainly send them right to you. My email is lyle@hannahresource.com. HANNA resource.com. But you can also go to our website and you can get the recording anytime. We hope people do that. And if you got a lot out of this and want to encourage friends to join us next week, please do that. We'd love to have you. It promises to be real exciting and interesting. Anything else, Ray? Final word.
I pass.
Well, I had one final question that came in, and thanks for that. It was a private question, so I'm happy to answer that real quick and then wrap things up. But so the question was, what happens when you're in a longer interviewing process with an interview with a job that you really want? Do you shift focus 100% to that, or keep going with other opportunities? Well, I'll tell you, that's a question I get from candidates all the time when I'm in process. And the hope is that your recruiter or your HR team is going to be very transparent on what that process looks like. There's a lot of approvals behind the scenes that needs to happen for a job to, get opened and then eventually closed and an offer made, and the finances and everything that go along with that. So I would say stay close to your recruiter. I would say make sure that they are giving you as much transparency on the process as possible. If you feel like they're pulling back a little bit, then I would say they're still probably evaluating other candidates. And if they're doing that, then I think you need to don't put all your eggs in one basket. Definitely don't just shift 100% focus. If you really want that job, stay close to it, but just make sure you're communicating with your liaison, and hopefully they're giving it to you straight. And sometimes it's true that hiring managers may be out of office, or somebody's only available on Thursday and it's Monday, and it's a slow, drawn-out process. But I think also asking what the steps are, right? So is it a phone interview first, then a video interview? In the new normal, are we doing an in-person interview? Do I need to do a panel interview with 7 other people? And does it take 2 weeks to get all those people together? That'll kind of help with that, and hopefully that answers your question. But we really appreciate everyone's time, and we will certainly get the slides out to everyone. Please do follow along for us. We've got a lot of really good sessions and great guest speakers coming up. Lyle, anything else you want to add?
That's it. Thank you all very much. Good luck. If you're looking for a job, we wish you the very best of luck in doing that. And we hope you'll join us again next Wednesday. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.